Hey, y'all. I'm Rob,
And I'm Erica.
and you're listening to Pumpkin Spice.
And Nothing Nice podcast.
This is episode 14. It's just tarot, bro.
Trigger warning. Topics discussed in this episode may not be suitable for all listeners. Okay.
The recording's in progress.
I hear you. You hear me. Everything
I
is
hear
plugged
you.
in.
You hear me. Everything's good. Hello. Hi. What's happening?
Okay.
You look
Happy
gorgeous today.
birthday.
Oh, thank you. You look gorgeous today.
You look gorgeous today, like it's your birthday.
It's like it's my birthday. It's the virgin blood, It keeps the crow's feet away.
Did you already bathe in it today?
Today,
Or
yeah.
is
Well,
that
today
daily
and
day?
every day. Today and every no. Yeah, right. They're
I
getting
run out
harder
of
and harder
time
to
for that
find.
person. Oh, goodness.
Well, actually, just a
So,
fun fact. Like the old wives' tales about like virgin sacrifices and whatnot. Do you know what that actually means? It has
no.
nothing to do with whether or not one has copulated with another person.
Oh,
Virgin blood refers to blood that has not priorly been used in ritual. That doesn't matter if you've had sex. That doesn't change your blood.
was that a problem back then?
I mean, I don't know where I didn't do the research into where the legend started, but like supernaturally and like spiritually speaking, virgin blood is just blood that hasn't been used in a ritual. That's virgin.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know. I don't
well,
toy
okay
with this
then.
stuff. There's too many diseases. I ain't got time for all that.
Well, okay then. So let's talk about the elephant in the room for a moment. You guys are probably wondering, where's episode 13? Or is it 14? No, it's 13. So we were going to have a talk about mental health, grief, and we had a licensed counselor that was going to be joining us, and that is still in the works. However, life has happened and things have come up, and we keep having to postpone and postpone. And so instead of postponing until eternity, because apparently I'm type A and I numerologically,
The word you're looking for is numerically.
thank you, that one, have painted us into a corner, we're just going to say that's the lost episode for right now. 13 is lost for right now, and 13.9999 will come after it. So when that happens, we will release it at that time. But for right now, it's just making us a little bit more mysterious.
What will
Welcome
we
to
have? What will we do next?
episode 14. What did we
Indeed,
decide
hi.
to call this?
Girl, I don't know. It's just tarot, bro.
We'll just call it as tarot, bro. Sounds good to me. Anyway, so there we are. So we're going to talk about one of Hobie's favoriteest things in the whole wide world, which is tarot.
Tarot,
And he's going to
yes.
just crack his skull open for us and just shake, and stuff's going to fall out. And that's all the information that you possibly would ever need.
Well, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do we're not going to do this is all the information you will ever need because tarot it evolves along with humanity. And as we evolve, so does tarot. So no one could possibly know everything there is to know about tarot. My goal is to kind of give people an idea on what tarot is, what tarot isn't, and kind of like a history, because there are some people that seem to believe that tarot is things that it's not, and I just want to clear all that up. And it's just something that I am passionate about. I've been reading tarot for 25 years, and I just really enjoy the mental health benefits that you can receive from tarot cards. And so that's what the goal is today. And the goal today also is not to ramble on for 2 and 3 hours, because literally I could talk about tarot every single day for months, because there is so much within tarot that we can talk about, from planetary alignments to zodiacal signs to all of these things. And that's not going to be today's episode. There's just a lot.
Okie dokie. So
Mhm.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with card one or?
Well, we're not going to go through all of the cards again because there are 78 of them.
Mhm.
I'm going to kind of break them down. I have some notes prepared to help keep myself organized. Um, I kind of want to talk about the history where tarot cards came from, and kind of work on the basics of what tarot is, um, basic symbolism, things like that, so people can kind of get an idea on how it works. And there are some parts of it that are a little complicated, but we're going to try and make it as user friendly as possible. First and foremost, do you have any idea on where tarot came from, how it originated, what tarot is? Do you have any kind of preconceptions besides the readings that you've gotten from people like me and whomever else on what tarot is at all?
So, you gave the class
Mm-hmm.
a little while ago, and so
Mm-hmm.
I know that is it Tarocchi?
That is the Italian word, yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I know that it used to be a card game that was a lot more used
Okay.
amongst non tarot readers
Okay.
per se. Um, and I know that the Fool is like you,
Right.
not
Okay.
you, but you as in the royal you.
Right, right. Okay. So that's a good place to start. So first of all, Tarocchi is still in existence today. It is still a card game that's being played. Um, and there are other countries that play similar card games to that. We have one that's similar to that here in the Western Hemisphere. We have spades or pinochle or these types of games that are trump-based games, right? You collect trumps. And
Not
so
that Trump, the other Trumps.
Yes. So Tarocchi was a game. It still is a game, and it was where readings. Tarot readings came after the game of Tarocchi, right? So you can trace cards and card playing all the way back to China, and then in the 1300s through trade, Europe received cards. And there are some speculations on where tarot cards specifically started. Some say that it's in the 1300s in France and that they were painted as a way to entertain the aristocrats. Some say it was the 14th century in Italy, and the card game became popular there, and the cards that we know of today were developed in and around then by somebody by the last name of Bento, I think, or Bembo. Bembo. Someone by the last name of Bembo was said to have painted the artwork on the cards that we use today, right? So basically, tarot cards, as we know them, have been around since about. I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call.
Who is it?
I think it was one of my siblings. One of my siblings. We'll just leave it at that. Anyway,
Okay.
so so the 15th century, 14th century, the 1500s is where we're going to start our conversation, right? So a fresco painter by the last name of Bembo had painted all of these types of cards by hand, and there were several different styles that had come out, and they all were for specific families, as it were, right? And then
His
they were
families
playing
is
card
in
games.
like a real family?
Yeah, as in aristocratic families in
Oh,
Italy.
okay, okay. So it was per like okay, I
Yeah,
follow.
and there are different styles and whatnot, what have you. And there are still 74 of the 78 cards left that had survived from the original deck, and they're in a museum in Milan. Well, they're split up.
Let's
They're in two museums.
go.
They're in two museums. But that's where tarot got its start, right? And then there were a lot of misconceptions about where he derived the symbolism of these cards, and they were supposedly based on the Egyptian mythos and the Kabbalah and all of these things, and that has been proven to not be accurate. There are some parallels into the symbolisms, but those have all been derived by spiritual practitioners. So they weren't actually the intended symbolism of the cards for the sake of the game, right? So then we're going to jump all the way to the 19th century. And that's when tarot cards, Tarochi, got the divinatory spin and they became tools for divination very much in our recent history. And it wasn't until the late 19th century that the decks that we all know today, the Rider Waite, I prefer to call them the Waite Smith, but be that as it may, were developed. And those cards very much are the same styles that we use today in 2024. So that's a very brief history of tarot. It was a card game. It is still a card game in many places, and now they're divinatory as of the last 150 years or so, 200 years.
Okay.
But we need to talk about what a tarot deck consists of. That's kind of important to know too. Traditionally, it has 78 cards. Older decks didn't have a preset number. However, the standard now is 78 cards, and some decks add a couple or here and there. So some decks have 80. The traditional Rider-Waite decks that we use today are all 78 cards. They're split up into two parts of the deck. You've got the major arcana, which is the first 22 cards, and then the minor arcana, which is the second 56 cards. We're going to get into what all of that kind of means in a minute. But the minor arcana are split up into 4 subgroups, right? Which are suits, much like a deck of playing cards.
Right.
You've got, most traditionally, you're going to have swords, cups, pinnacles, and wands, right? Those names change slightly based on art, but that's the typical names of all the suits. You can see chalices instead of cups. You can see coins instead of pinnacles. You can see rods or staves instead of wands. You can see knives or needles instead of swords, but they're all going to be basically the same thing. And then you have the royal cards, which are page, knight, king, and queen. Some places call them other words. You'll have words like knave. You'll have words like princess, prince, knight, and queen instead of king and queen. Those are all artistic contributions by the artist, but in essence, they're all the same things, right?
Okay.
They're set up like a card game. They really are. Your minor arcana are your playing cards, and then your major arcana are your trump cards, the ones that are higher in number than your suits, right? So
Not that Trump.
thinking of things like spades, for example, your trump cards are the spade cards, right? So that's one suit of the deck. So a fourth of the deck are trumps, right? In Tarochi, your trump cards are a specific set of cards, the first 22 in the deck, from the Fool to the World, right? Those are your trump cards. So you still work with 4 suits and then a trump. But tarot as a divinatory tool has many purposes. There are really 2 paths that you can utilize tarot for. You've got the internal path and the external path. The internal is an effective tool for self-understanding and transformations. With the cards, you explore your life, the events that happen to you, and the feelings that you experience, and kind of everything in between, right? And tarot is a really good tool to provide things like insight to your problems. It acts like a mirror that reflects our soul or the unconsciousness to our consciousness, right? We see metaphorical reflections of our lives through the images on the cards. And with practice, we learn to understand what the symbols and meaning of the cards are, which allow us to probe into the mysteries of our subconscious and the processes of our conscious. And that's kind of why I use tarot, is the more internal, right? Even if I'm reading for somebody else, I'm reading about them, right? So like when I'm doing a reading for you, we're not so much worried about the future so much. We typically kind of just involve our readings and what's going on with you and your life, right? But there's the external path also, which kind of is those past, present, future type scenarios, right? We're looking at the larger picture of our interactions within the world. The cause and effects become clear. we become to understand how our actions affect everything else. Predictive readings or fortune telling are the main aspect of external tarot. So when you're trying to divine the future, you're using the actions that you have today and forecasting how those actions will affect future events, right?
Correct. Mhm.
Which is why it's kind of difficult to read the future, because actions aren't concrete. You can change your entire future by making one decision, right?
And
But
even then, outer influence can change it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. But it's important to know what tarot is and the internal and external factors of it, right? So what is tarot not? There are a lot of myths and misconceptions about tarot reading, right? First of all, tarot is not evil, nor is it the work of the devil, right? Tarot cards are just cards. They're pictures on thickened paper.
Right. When I watch you read cards for people, I don't see the devil with you ever.
Ever.
Like
right?
where's his hard work?
Right. What he ain't putting in no sorts of effort into these readings,
Yeah.
right? Tarot,
He's
I've
not
also heard
whispering
that
over your shoulder. Tell her that one means that she's going to get
she's impregnated by the Antichrist.
impregnated by me. Tell her I think she's really sexy and I'd like her number.
I've also heard that tarot invites demons into your home. It's demonic.
Okay, well, that goes to what I said. Tell her that she's really sexy and I'd like her number.
Right.
I'm sorry, y'all. We both woke up from a nap just like a few minutes ago. So we're working with mice upstairs. Just
right. I'm on my coffee, which, by the way, my cousin got me some pumpkin spice, that smoky moonshine, old smoky moonshine, pumpkin spice cream.
The distillery.
Yeah, so it's coffee creamer.
How exciting!
Delicious. Because I had such a wine hangover this morning. It was rough.
I bet you did, sir. We were talking late into the morning.
Yeah, and that was a bottle and a half. It was great. Anyway, but I would like to be clear. Tarot isn't like a portal, right? You're not opening anything to use tarot cards. It's not some open system of communication. It does not connect with spirits wandering around, and it does not act like a portal like spirit boards would, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tarot connects to your highest self, your unconscious or divinity. Because tarot works with these inner processes, this makes it a closed system.
Right.
Even when we open tarot to go into our inner self, tarot connects to the universe as a whole or to your divinity, depending on your spiritual beliefs. And when that happens, that's called a limited system, open to only one source, which is a positive one, right? So there is no invitation to demons to enter your life or your home or your soul because you use tarot cards. For me, I'm an atheist. It's very much a closed system, right? I don't work with God or angels or anything like that with the tarot cards, right? And it doesn't invite anybody in. Like, I don't have a demon problem.
Are you sure you don't have a demon problem? Have you talked to a professional about it?
By professional, yes.
Okay. You know, the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem.
Indeed. And if I did, he'd be the first to know, because I'd be like, because I don't believe in demons. So
Reverend Tom is standing behind me right now. I know it.
Reverend Tom lives in Kansas, and that's like 12 hours away.
Oh, Bonnie's going to be upset. We're talking about her basement demon. Anyway, so for clarification purposes, I know that there are a lot of people that do use, like, there are some decks that are referred to as like heaven's messages or angels or something like that. So is that strictly called that because of an artist's representation on the cards?
Yes.
Or do they use them in a manner that is spiritual?
So those are oracle cards, right? And that's a
Mhm.
really good topic you're bringing up. The difference between oracle cards and tarot cards, right? Tarot
Okay.
cards is based on a system, right? They all share a common system, right? Oracle cards are completely independent to the artist and the author, right? Because oftentimes they're not the same person. Oftentimes, the person that does the designing of the cards is not the person that writes their intended meanings, right? They're often two different people. So Oracle decks are completely designed by the artist and the author. So they don't necessarily mean the same things. I have probably 60 Oracle decks, and none of them are the same. None of them mean the same things. None of them have the same symbolism. None of them have the same number of cards in the deck. So they're all completely independent based on who creates the deck, right? Now, with things like angel messages or messages from heaven, messages from your ancestors, messages from your spirits, there are readers and there are spiritual practitioners that do call themselves psychic and do say that they have the ability to communicate with spirits outside of our realm, right? So they could use those cards for a limited open system where they're speaking to the specific entity, right?
Mhm.
And then that entity can speak through the cards. That would be how those are used. But the cards themselves are still just cards, right? They are called what they're called because the artist wanted to call them that.
Okay.
That's it. Right.
So when should you pay for oracle cards readings? For example, like on TikTok, when should you
Mhm.
pay someone for that?
Well, okay. So on social media, I would always watch a reader for a little while first because there are some things that you want to look out for, right? And that'll kind of go into our conversation that we'll briefly touch on how to read the cards, right? But you want to make sure that the person is shuffling in between each person, number one. You always starting with a fresh deck. Number two, you don't want to keep hearing the same messages over and over and over again, right? You don't want to hear the Two of Swords, even that has kind of specific meanings. You don't want to hear him say, "You got the Two of Swords. I just read this card for this person." You know what I mean? You want to make sure that this reader can relate the cards that are being provided to the question being asked, right? So make sure that the reader can read the cards, number one. Number two, if they are doing yes or no questions from off the rip, right? And you're asking to be paying for yes or no questions, and they're using tarot or oracle for yes or no questions. That's kind of a red flag for me. Okay. I've been reading tarot for 25 years, and I still don't like to do yes or no questions with the tarot because tarot is not black and white. Yes, each card has meanings. It means something, but oftentimes those meanings are not a yes or a definitive no, right? So utilizing tarot cards for black and white yes or no questions is a red flag to me because then there's a 50-50 chance that that fucker is lying to you, right? You know what I mean? Like the devil card, for example, is a no, regardless if it's in reverse or upright. You know what I mean? But people will be like, oh, it's a devil in reverse. That's a yes, friend. Congratulations.
That's a
No,
no and a hell no.
that's a no. No, it's a no. Right.
And should you go back to your ex? No. I
No,
don't even have tarot cards. No.
no. Like, so just watch those red flags. It's not too much in how they shuffle, as long as they're shuffling between each question and not pulling questions from the same deck. You know what I mean? You've shuffled it for one question. So if this person pays for 5 questions, you want to shuffle the deck in between all 5 questions. So make sure they're doing things like that. If they're doing yes or no questions, make sure that they're not using the same deck to answer everyone's question. You know what I mean? So if someone will ask, is my boyfriend coming back? No. This is, am I going to win the lottery? Yes. You know what I mean? Make sure they're not using the same deck for everybody in the chat because that's a red flag for me. But when should you start paying for readings? Number one, if you feel comfortable paying for them, first of all. So that's the first thing. Make sure you feel comfortable spending that money. Make sure you have the money to spend. Tarot is for entertainment purposes only. It is a luxury type service. It is not something that you should risk not being able to afford your bills to pay for a reading. Some readings can be expensive, so make sure that you are financially responsible enough to know whether or not you can afford the reading, first off. Second off, if an email is offered for them to send you your reading, that is a red flag. Only pay for a live interacting reading, right? I am more than happy to follow up with an email over the things that we talked about if you've paid for a full reading, but don't just pay for someone says, I will send your reading to you via email. That is a very much a copy and paste situation. They have all of their cards written up, they copy and paste and send it to you. Don't pay for readings like that. Make sure you're comfortable, make sure you're financially responsible enough, and just make sure that the reader looks like there's somebody that knows what they're talking about, that if you get a reading from them, it's trustworthy. And they're not just doing it for trending shit on the internet. Because now it's getting so trendy, people are using Uno cards to make fun of tarot card readers. That's how trending it's become on social media.
I personally enjoy the guy that does shit tarot. He has no idea what he's reading. He just makes it up as he goes.
And
He's
those are
fantastic.
hilarious. Those are
He's
hilarious. Yeah.
Mhm.
I often find myself scrolling FYP late at night. And by FYP, for those of you that are not on TikTok, that's the For You page, right? So that's the streaming page, right? And I'll pop into a random late night card readers live, and it's very clear that they're very new readers. And I love the fact that they're reading. I love it when people try to learn a skill and practice it. And the best way to practice is to do, right? But they clearly haven't grasped exactly how to do it. So they are speaking a lot of nonsense, and they're charging people like $10 and $20 for card readings, and they don't know what they're doing. And I'll hop in the chat. I'll be like, hey, how long have you been reading? You know what I mean? And they'll be like, I've been reading for about 3 months. And I went, oh, and you're charging $20 for that reading. And then I typically get blocked. But, watch out for stuff like that. Or when I pay for a reading from them, I'm like, hey, here's a cash app for $10. Throw me a couple cards. And when they tell me what they think the cards mean, and I'm like, well, that's not what that card means. So let me.
You're totally wrong, and that's okay.
But let's learn from this experience. Like, yeah, that's a thing though. But it's trending everywhere.
So another thing that I see is on the For You page where it's like a collective reading. And it's total bullshit, but it's meant to throw out there, grab some likes for people that it resonates with. And it's like literally what's being told is not anything to do with you. It's just a random message, and you're choosing to take it as yours.
Right.
And
so
if you make your life choices off that,
we're gonna talk about in a little bit how tarot works as a supernatural idea and as a natural idea, because psychology does play a very large part in tarot, right?
Okay.
And that is a natural style of how tarot works. It's touching into things that you resonate with, small little implantable messages that you connect to, right? So as a whole, those collective readings, okay, they're going to be and on social media, there's a science for the algorithm. The algorithm knows who is going to interact with that post based on other things they've interacted with, right? So say that you are really deep into like mental health TikTok, and you're watching videos on things like bipolar, on things like depression, on things like heartbreak. You're going to see, and you watch tarot related content, you are going to see community readings that are based on getting over a relationship. You're going to see community readings based on overcoming depression, overcoming heartbreak. It's going to be better, friend. And here's the proof. You're going to see those because the algorithm is set up to do that for you. Right? So there's a science behind social media. There absolutely is. But I mean, in a live stream, I've done, collective readings, and usually I use Oracle for those. I mean, and a lot of them are messages that people just need to hear, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I also don't claim to be speaking to anybody's spirit guides or ancestors or anything like that when I do my collective readings. I'm just like, well, here's a message for all of us today. This is something we all need to think about. Be your true self and things like that.
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah.
Since we are at this moment, it's on my mind, so I don't forget. Can you please also tell our audience who may listen to us, who may be interested in doing tarot through TikTok or through other apps, there are people that steal profiles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Social media is a beast for that. Any way to scam someone on the internet will try it,
Financially. Mm-hmm.
right? And the easiest way to scam people, especially broken people, is to appeal to their sense of brokenness through tarot or other spiritual means. This includes spell work. This includes divination readings. This includes curses, hexes, anything like that. They will attempt to scam you. And what they do, especially on video platforms, is they will take videos of someone that does these services that people know and trust, and will create an entire account based on these readers and these spiritual advisors or these spell crafters, and they will try to scam you as if they are that person that you know and trust to get your money for a reading. And every single time you get a reading from them, they're going to tell you that you've been cursed, or that you've been hexed, or that your boyfriend left you, but I can bring your boyfriend back. Every single time. The reading will probably be free. The spell work will be $500. Yeah.
Oh, Lord, just let me be cursed.
You know what I mean? So be very careful with that. Yeah, don't ever open DMs from people you don't know, and especially if you know that
Grand
creator
Rising.
has. Oh my God, your energy called to me. Would you like me to consider you for a reading? First of all, there is not a single solitary professional reader that needs to reach out to someone for a reading.
Yep.
We
They
know
will
that
never, ever, ever, ever message you first. Never. Not
never,
once.
ever,
Not ever.
never,
Not just because you're
never,
cool. Never.
never.
If
We
they're reaching
know,
out, it's a scam.
yeah, because if we readings are fun, I love it, but they're also work. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to put myself in the position to overwork myself. When someone needs a reading, they know they can come to me. I may advertise that, hey, I'm running a discount. So instead of it being $30 for 45 minutes, it's only going to be $20. You know what I mean? And to make it more accessible for people that may not be able to afford 30 or 40 bucks or 50 bucks for an hour or whatever like that. You know what I mean? But I'm never going to send someone a DM that says, hey, your name really caught my interest. Would you like a reading? I would never. I would never. So don't accept readings from people that you haven't reached out to for a reading. Some more myths.
That includes being added as a friend. Just because these people are reaching out and adding all of these friends, it's a mass ad, and it's the same thing as being messaged. Unless you have interacted in some capacity with someone that they should add you as a friend, they will not.
Yeah. Period.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And also with that thought, it's how a lot of them work is they're in live streams. These scammers are in live streams of these readers, and they're reading the chat. So when you walk in and say, Tracy, will Billy Bob propose to me tomorrow? That scammer looked at your profile name, added you as a friend, and knows what kind of situations are going on in your life. And they will reach out to your readings about the fact that you've lost a relationship. So be careful on what you're asking in public chat rooms about your tarot card readings, because they will scam the shit out of you. I've had people reach out to me saying that someone that looked like me scammed them out of hundreds of dollars. And I'm like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. So,
when I first started following you, before I weaseled myself into your life, that we would have a podcast together, there were tons of fake accounts for you. And I remember asking you, are these, and you're like, no, they're not. They're all fake people. They create a fake profile. They change the lettering one place or barely anything. And then they just take the videos and repost them, save them, repost them. And it has nothing to do with you at all.
Yeah, and then like they'll make their Cash App name super close, right? So
and
like
TikTok
my Cash App
doesn't do anything about it.
No, because I'm not verified. But my Cash App is, if anyone's interested, it's money sign ROBBLR. They'll use a capital I instead of a lowercase l because in text it looks exactly the same. So people think that it's me, and it's not. It's not. And that's it. Yes, that's the thing. But a couple of more like myths about tarot is that they speak half truths or that tarot is always right. Some will say that tarot can be misleading, telling you half truths to gain your trust, only to sell you larger lies to harm you, right? This kind of goes back to the idea that tarot is evil and made of the devil, because the Lucifer is the father of lies in Christianity, right? It's not true. It's a closed system of communication. So the messages that you're getting from the cards are your interpretation of the messages of the cards, not that the cards are lying to you. So if it ends up being a lie, it's because you misinterpreted what the cards were saying in the first place.
But
It's a
also that
symbolic,
it was held so closely to your,
right,
like you took it in so deeply that it would affect you that way.
right. The problem lies that the reader and their ability to understand the cards, um, and not reading what they want to see, but reading what they need to see is important, especially when you read for yourself. It's really hard to remove the ego out of the situation when you're reading tarot cards for yourself and make sure that you're being objective in what the cards are actually saying versus what you want the cards to say, right? Tarot is magic, is another myth I've heard. You have to have magical powers to use tarot cards. It's
Hmm.
it's magic that enables you to look at pictures and memorize divinatory meanings. um, it's a tool. There's no magic involved in tarot cards, except for the magic that is art, that any other art is magic. Um,
That you took the time and dedication to learn is
right,
magic.
right.
Because like you were like you didn't after 30 minutes be like, fuck this is complicated. I think
No.
that's what I did.
Mhm.
But I was also a
Well,
child.
yeah, all right. It takes work. Another myth is tarot is anti-religion, right? And
Mhm.
that's giving consciousness to paper is what that is. When you say something is anti-religion, that means that object had the conscious thought to be against religion, right? Tarot is fucking paper. Okay. Like they're cards. Okay. They have no religion. They have no faith. They have no anything. And you don't have to be religious to use the cards. I'm an atheist, a very staunch atheist, and I can read tarot cards, right? There is no God of tarot. There is no, divine source that you need as a prerequisite for reading the tarot cards. They're just fucking cards, right? Another myth is tarot are only used for fortune telling. Well, no, they're not only used for fortune telling. That's a big thing for tarot, especially when you're like at a party or you're at like a carnival or you're at like a Ren fair and you see a tarot card reader. They're fortune tellers. They're going to try and read your future for money, right? It's an entertainment situation. But that's not the only thing that tarot can be used for. It can help with, processing trauma. It can help with developing a plan to get over a situation. It can help figure out what's going on in your life that you may not be paying attention to. There's a lot of things that can tarot can be used that aren't reading the future, right?
If you've got a wobbly chair, you can slide a few under it and balance it back
Balance it back
out.
out. Um, Another myth is that card readings are static, right? Which means that the Two of Swords only means these five things, right? And there is yes and no's to that. There are specific
Isn't it like they
idea,
have a spine? There's like a spine to the cards, but then you can branch off of
right,
it like a tree.
right. So there are like key words that you can tune in on with each of the cards. You know what I mean? But that's why I say tarot evolves as people evolve, because we start associating different things and tarot tells a story. So there isn't necessarily a 100% the Two of Swords only means this. But if you put the Two of Swords with, say, the Chariot card or the Two of Swords next to any card, those cards come together and tell a story. So you can't just take the key words that are in the book and as a static meaning for the card, right? Um, and some other myths I've heard, just to be real quick about these, that there are concrete rules to reading tarot cards, right? You have to get your cards a certain way. They have to be a gift. Your first deck of tarot cards, you can't buy on your own. They have to be given to you. That is a tradition that dates back to a certain religion and a certain group of people. And if that's what you believe, I love that for you. But the fact of the matter is, friend, tarot cards are fucking paper. And if I want to buy some paper, I will. And that kind of goes for anybody. And you also have to think about, how would that even be a thing? How would tarot be a thing if you have to receive it as a gift first? Who got the first deck and how did they get it?
Right.
Like, so that
It's not
just
going to impact how the cards are read
that doesn't make
or
sense
how
to
you
me.
read them. It's just go buy some if you want some.
Right. That the origins of tarot are mysterious and no one really knows. No, that's a blatant lie. We know pretty substantially how tarot originated and where it comes from and all of that. Like,
There
that's
was not a mountain witch that was blind, but used some random eye that she found from some dead man to create these paper cards with images.
Right. You should never let anyone touch your tarot decks. Again, that's not really true. That deals with a religion, that deals with tradition, that deals with metaphysical things and energy signatures and all that kind of stuff. And that is purely an opinion. It's not a fact, right?
But don't touch somebody else's shit if it's not
don't
yours.
touch anybody else's shit, right? But it's not going to damage the reading if someone touches your cards. They're not going to be tainted.
You don't need to throw them out now.
No, you don't need to run them under the moonlight or anything like that. You don't need to.
Not like when my children drink out of my drinks.
And you got floaties and shit
yours
in
now.
there. Right. You have to use a specific shuffle ritual to get the cards to shuffle correctly. You have to shuffle them a certain way. You can't bend the cards. You can't do this. You can't do that. Blah, 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 blah. No, just don't rip your cards is the only thing I say. Like, shuffle them how you want to shuffle them. The important part is that you're mixing them together. How that occurs for you is between you and the cards. You know what I mean? I learned how to play cards at the same time I was learning how to read tarot cards. I shuffle like they're playing cards. That's how I've done it my entire life. Do the cards wear out? Absolutely. Those are called lovelorn cards. And do I have a few decks that I can't read anymore because they're starting to tear? Absolutely. I've been reading cards for 25 years. Some of my older decks are no longer readable. However, I'm going to do me. And if you don't like it, don't get a reading from me. That's how I say it. Just don't get a reading from me. The cards must be wrapped in a silk cloth.
Oh, luxurious.
My cards are, if they're not in the box they fucking came in, they're in a bandana or a Ziploc baggie. Let's be real. I don't care about that. If I'm going to read at a party for the sake of entertainment, I have a tarot bag, I have tarot cloth, I have all of that my cards will come in. But I have 160 decks of cards. I'm not buying a silk scarf for each fucking one of them. They're in the box that came in. Absolutely. And sometimes that box is torn to shit because I open and close it all the time, right?
Yeah.
You have to keep your cards under your pillow at night to connect with them. Also not true.
Why your back hurts so bad all the time.
Indeed.
Because you have 9,000 decks of cards in their boxes or in Ziploc bags.
Underneath your pillow. You need to be psychic to read the tarot? No. You should not read for yourself. And I have people that will argue this with me day in and day out. And fuck you. That's what I have to say to you. And I've been told by people who just bought their first deck, the book clearly says not to read for yourself. And that really, A, pisses me off. Number two, I've been reading, this person was like 22 years old. And I'm like, geez, Mosa, I've been reading cards longer than you've been upon the earth. I'm going to need you to sit down. Okay. Do I recommend anybody solely reading for themselves? No, not until they can get rid of their ego. Right. But when you're learning how to read the cards, how else are you going to learn them except for reading them? Right. And you don't want to read someone else's tarot until you've learned what the cards mean. Reading for yourself is fundamental. It's important. You just have to be able to be objective in what the cards are saying and not say, am I going to get this job I applied for? And then pull up a bunch of cards and be like, oh, I guess that's a yes. It could be a no, and it'll also explain to you why. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be objective in your readings, especially for yourself. But
Right.
don't let anyone tell you you can't read for yourself. That is a bunch of bullshit. You cannot do more than one reading at a time. Um,
I don't have the mind. If I were to read tarot, I don't know that I would have the mind ability to do that.
it's not recommended, but I mean, you can. The thing that I think is more important to realize is if you're going to be reading the same issue over and over and over again, right? If you are trying to figure something out and you're not getting the answers that you are looking for, you need to like rephrase the question or something like that. Don't try to ask the same question over and over and over again, thinking you're going to get different answers, right? That's the main thing with that. But yeah, so yeah, anyway, so try not to make it a boring lesson. I'm trying to kind of be quick through some of this stuff. But how tarot works, right? There is a supernatural idea, and then there's the more natural idea. So just quickly speaking, supernaturally speaking, tarot works as a direct communication with the divine. This is more of like an old school belief that you are communicating with gods or ancestors and the universe and all of this, and they're speaking through you into the cards. That is more of a supernatural view of how the cards work. Using the Akashic records. If you don't know what the Akashic records are, we're not getting into it. There's a lot.
Not today, at least.
Not today. Energy and forces. So when you're shuffling the deck and I'm reading for you, you're putting your energy into these cards to get the answer you're looking for. Synchronicity, and is another supernatural idea. And this was developed by psychiatrist Carl Jung, who also developed shadow work, which is great. But synchronicity explains the meaningful coincidences, how two separate events can relate to each other but are not the cause of one or the other. Jung believed in the collective unconscious and felt that events do not occur by chance. And so this brings the belief that everything in life happens for some reason, that events are not random, and that there are meanings to the random things that happen. When applied to the tarot, that means that when the cards come up, which seems to be random and happen by coincidence, they actually came up because of the situation at hand. Right? So there's a synchronicity when it comes to tarot and the universe. That's a supernatural idea of tarot. Now, the natural ideas about tarot is that it's not something mystical, magical, or supernatural. It's merely reading understanding the definitions of the cards, and that it's not interacting with divine or higher sources of knowledge. So basically, you have things like apophenia. Apophenia, that's how you say that word, which is the skeptical reasoning and understanding of synchronicity, right? So Klaus Conrad coined this idea, apophenia, in the 1950s, and it's the experience of seeing patterns or meanings in something that is random, meaningless, and unrelated. The human mind tries to find meaning in patterns and things that are random. Synchronicity is not real and is the example of how we find and give meanings to events that are meaningless. Right?
Who created that?
So Klaus Conrad coined the term apophenia as kind of the opposite of synchronicity.
He sounds like
Right.
a party pooper.
I mean, a little bit. A little bit.
What a fun guy to be around.
But in this mindset, tarot is often seen as completely random, and the reader finds meaning in the cards according to the situation. It does not matter which cards come up, as any card can be applied to any issue. This view may seem negative or make tarot look bad, but on the contrary, it does not. It doesn't say tarot is not useful. It just explains a possible way that it works or how we use it. It doesn't prove tarot to be false. It only removes the supernatural aspect of how tarot works. And you've also got the psychological or subconscious. And this is what we're getting into when we were talking about the collective readings you see on your FYP. If this card hits your FYP, this reading is for you. Right? I didn't use any hashtags or keywords in my caption. This reading is specifically for you, random fucking stranger on the internet
Mm-hmm.
who may not even speak the language that I am currently speaking. This tarot
Mhm.
reading is for you, right? So, a great alternative to the spiritual explanation is the psychological one. There are a series of projective psychological tests that tarot could be said to fall under. And a projective test basically allows people to respond to ambiguous stimulus, right? And it reveals unconscious emotions, motivations, and internal conflicts. One of these types of tests is a Rorschach test, right? So you get presented with an image and you tell me what the image is. And what, based on what you say the image is, it leads to these traits, right? So that's one of the ways tarot cards can be used as a projective psychological test, right? Then you've got the thematic perception test. But many readers compare tarot to Rorschach. A better comparison would be the thematic apperception test, because the thematic apperception test uses scenic photos of people, which are interpreted by the patient by explaining what they see happening before, during, and after the image. In short, they are creating a story. The story is fueled by the subconscious. Like, for example, the drawing could have a male approaching a young girl crying. One may say the child hurt herself and the man is the father coming in to comfort her. Another could say that the girl is lost and the man is a stranger, either coming to help or not help. This process is a major part of tarot, the creating of stories based on the images in the cards. Each card holds within it its own story to be told, and when placed together with other cards, create more of an in-depth story. The story process does not need to involve any supernatural connections. Some would argue that the story creation process involves intuition, but then we could argue that and say that intuition is simply a spiritual word for creative imagination. But this method is highly important when reading the cards for self-improvement and introspection. Your unconscious will manifest through the cards, like that of the thematic apperception tests, right? So those are two separate ways on how tarot is believed to work. Whether or not you believe in the supernatural versions is fine. Whether or not you believe that they are random and we're piecing together the story is fine. It's not so much whether or not the cards are telling the truth. It's whether or not the cards are helping. And that's the important distinction. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that tarot cards are always going to tell you good things, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that the tarot will help you manifest $1 million. That's not what tarot is for. Tarot is to figure out what's going on in your present life to make things more clear. However that happens is none of my business. I don't care how tarot works. I just know that it does. But those are several examples of how tarot cards work, both supernaturally and realistically, right? So yeah. Do we have any questions so far before we start getting into like the more nitty gritty of the cards?
I just say my questions as they come to my head.
Okay. So now that we kind of have an overview of what tarot is, what tarot isn't, what tarot could be, where tarot came from, let's kind of talk about the cards themselves. Okay. And the way I want to do this, because this is not a tarot 101 class, I'm not teaching anybody how to read tarot. I'm just kind of trying to give you an idea of the pieces of the puzzle. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start talking about the anatomy of the traditional tarot card deck. And with that, we're going to start with the major arcana, right? Which major arcana means greater secrets. Then the minor arcana means lesser or smaller secrets, right?
It's the secret.
As I mentioned before, the standard tarot card deck consists of 78 cards, 22 major arcana and 56 minor arcana. Understanding how the deck is structured is the key to finding order and clarity within the cards. You have to know how the cards work with each other in order to be able to get the meanings, right? They're not just 78 random archetypes. They exist within a strong web of relationships. So these cards are designed in such a way that they fit together to tell a story. They're not just random cards. There are some tarot card decks that the artwork is completely random. There's one of the queer decks were done by 78 independent artists. So one artist designed each card, and they were all queer artists, be it trans, be it cis, gay, whatever. And so each card is completely different than the next. But that's not a traditional card. Most traditional tarot cards are going to be the same art on all of them so that it tells a pretty coherent story, right? So the major arcana, as I said, is the first 22 cards of the deck, and they are known as the major arcana, the greater secrets. They represent larger life lessons that come together to form something called the Fool's Journey, which is why I said that the Fool is you, the reader or the querent. So the major arcana tells an entire story. And a lot of times when I'm teaching people how to read tarot, the first thing I want them to kind of look into is what's called the Fool's Journey. And that is looking at each one of the major arcana cards in chronological order and writing what those cards mean and how they relate to your life, right? Because that's what the major arcana does. It's the bigger picture of your life, right? So the Fool's Journey describes the path of the soul from innocence to individualization, right? It represents the universal search for personal growth and meaning. Each one of us is on our own full journey, and although each one of us has a unique path, they all comprise universal elements. The full journey can be further broken down into 3 stages, or in occult terminology, sepentaries, right? So those 3 major categories of our life, you would have the conscious, the unconscious, and the superconscious, right? And this is where it gets a little specific, a little crazy.
I do have a quick question. I'm sorry. So each individual major arcana character is itself. So like the Fool card, he is not repeated in any other card, or that character is not repeated in any other character.
You will see that a lot of the depictions on the minor arcana cards, okay, will have characters that look like the Fool because it's all the Fool's Journey, right?
Okay.
But up until you get to the royal cards, the face cards, right? So those face cards are going to be specific characteristics of specific people, and that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But you will see the Fool interpreted many different ways throughout your tarot cards. He won't just be looking the exact same as he does on the Fool card. But the thing to remember is the Fool is you, right? So it's telling a story of you. So you're going to see that same type of idea through the minor arcana. You're not going to see the Fool in any of the other major arcana cards, but they all the major arcana cards, which we're not going to get into that in this conversation, all of them relate to the minor arcana in various ways, be it astrological signs, be it elemental correspondences. All of the major arcana interact with the minor arcana, right? And you can do parallels between all of the cards and which major arcana they fit with. We're not going to do that for the sake of this conversation. As I said, there's a whole lot that goes into tarot cards, and you can get down into the nitty gritty and really enrich yourself with tarot. I mean, there's a lot, but just on the surface, yes, to answer your question, you will see the Fool again. He just may not look exactly the same. Gotcha. So the conscious, it looks like material concerns that affect our worldly lives. So a child being born into the world, discovering their will, meeting their parents, confronting others, and developing their ego. This would be described growing into adulthood. So those are the first 7 cards of the major arcana. It's important to note that the Fool is number 0. So the Fool is its own card all by itself. And then you have the rest of them. So starting with the Magician through the Chariot, the first 7 cards. And these typically will represent the conscious. The second set is the unconscious, which is on the inner world and the search for identity. We confront many aspects and facets of ourselves, as well as challenges and decisions that will help define who we are. Thus, many of the themes in the unconscious stage are considered moral ideas. And that'll be cards 8 through 14. So strength through temperance. All of those deal with moral or facets of ourself. So being closed-minded, being judgmental, feelings of weakness, things that need to be changed, having patience, all of those types of ideas are going to fit in those cards. And the last stage of the major arcana, we have the super conscious, which deals with the fool's experience as they develop awareness of their role and place within the greater world, right? So where you find your place in the world that you live in. And this is the eternal and universal forces of the psyche. So we're dealing with your psyche in this, and that's cards 15 through 21, which is the devil to the world. So these deal with like emotional, hidden, maturity, spiritual awareness is where we find ourselves in the superconscious. So that was a very basic breakdown of the major arcana. There are 22 cards. They're split into 3 categories. The conscious, which deals with your social, external, your youth, your growing into adulthood. The unconscious, which deals with internal stuff, your inward search into adulthood and your like morality. And then the superconscious, which is much more spirituality, right? That's where all those fit in. Now we have the minor arcana. Now the minor arcana are the lesser secrets. These are kind of like everyday things. So one of the big distinctions between the major arcana and the minor arcana is the major arcana are major fucking things in your life. The minor arcana are really kind of run-of-the-mill day-to-day situations, right? And they're broken down just like any other standard deck of playing cards, right? You've got ace through 10 and then 4 face cards, 4 suits, right? Now, the thing about the minor arcana is the suit is important as well as the number of the card. Those are important things to hone in on because each number has representations, each suit has representations, right? And so it's kind of important to know the how do I want to say this? Okay, so they generally, as I said, generally concern mundane matters in the course of one's life, from the ace to the 10, aspects of the self or literal people in one's life, which are the court cards. That's what I was talking about, the Fool journey, and you will see aspects of the Fool in all the cards, but the face cards kind of have their own little realm where they live. With some awareness of the elements, numerology, and court card roles, we can combine those meanings in order to arrive at an understanding of how the minor arcana works. For example, aces typically represent things like individuality, new beginnings, potentials, momentum, things like inspirations. Twos represent choices, balance, cooperations, partnerships. Threes represent things like groups, raw energy, development, expressions, creativity, planning. 4 represents structures, manifestations, foundations, stability, and whether or not you have the endurance to follow through with what you're trying to do. 5s are typically conflict and changes, fluctuation and challenges. So 5s typically, I'll call them the conflict and changes card. 5s represent that. 6s are harmony, adjustment, alignment, commitments, and pleasures. These are all very basic. But 7s are introspection, investigation, reflection, spirituality. 8s are achievement, rebirth, perfection, action. 9s are attainment, things that are nearing completion, abundance, and idealism. And 10s are completions, fulfillments, success, and things coming full circle. Right. And the thing that's important to note is these meanings you can use for regular playing cards. You don't have to use them for tarot cards. Because if you think about it, 4 suits, ace through 10, four court cards in each one, they're playing cards, right? So these numerology meanings are the same as they are in reading tarot with playing cards.
You just don't have your majors.
You just don't have your majors. Exactly. And then, as I said before, you've got 4 suits, and they are wands, cups, swords, and pentacles.
Wands. Oh, okay, yep.
And they all have an element associated with them, right? And the elements are what kind of give more specific identity to each of the cards. So you take the number and the element, and that's how you get what each specific card kind of represents. So wands are the fire element. So they're going to do things like willpower, creativity, passion, inspiration, and energy, right? So if you were to say like the five of wands, for example, without having a subject matter to relate it to, you're looking at things that are changes or conflicts within your willpower or your creativity or your passions, things like that. So that's kind of how they relate to each other.
Can
The
I take a
number,
moment real quick?
yeah.
If you go and you have someone read you, whether it's you
Mhm.
or some other reader, and you say, I don't have something to read about, just read me general.
Mhm.
If you get a good damn reader,
Mhm.
they will pull that little seed right out of your head and put it
Mhm.
on a plate for you and be like, is this what you wanted? And then you'll be crying in the corner and you'll say, okay, you got me.
Yeah,
But
right,
if you get a good reader, they can hit you in the core. It
right.
doesn't matter if you give any kind of hints or anything. So don't just, if you want to do it, give it a shot, because a good reader can really help you to take the ingredients in your brain
Right.
and the recipe of the cards and make you understand your meal.
Absolutely. And the thing that's I think is important to remember as the person receiving a reading, oftentimes that reader doesn't know anything about you, right? And more often than not, a tarot card reader is not psychic, right? We're not reading your mind to divine the answers. We're attempting to tell you what the cards say in relation to what you want to know, right? Because these cards can have 5 billion meanings, right? So we will speak in very ambiguous language at start so that we figure out what direction you need the reading to go in. If it's relationship based, if it's work based, if it's anything like that, that helps us nail down what the card is saying more specifically. So don't be worried about ambiguous language from a reader you've never met or have spoken to. We're not going to be able to tell you exactly what the situation is unless you tell us what direction you want this reading to go in. And I think people feel scammed sometimes, especially like on social media, when they get a reading online in a live stream and the reader doesn't hit the nail on the head with one card. Because I mean, it's a card. This is what the card means. What has it to do with your life is up to you to either share with the reader so we can be more specific, or for you to internalize and realize what the card is intending to say to you about your situation, right? So there is a symbiotic relationship between reader and recipient because we are giving you information. It is your job to take the information and process it for what you need the information for. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is kind of important. Cups are represented by water, and they are our emotions, our intuition, our instincts, relationships, and oftentimes love, which is why the Two of Cups is often that partner card, that relationship card. People think it's the lovers, and the lovers doesn't always mean love like that.
Lover's card is my favorite card.
It is
Well, it's not my favorite card. It's my favorite meaning for a card.
Right. It's commitments, and it can be platonic. It can be romantic.
It doesn't mean relationship. It means
no.
to a situation where there has to be communication.
Right. And when the lover's card comes up for someone who's single and, they're working on what they can do to find love, that lover's card could then symbolize needing to hold yourself accountable and making sure that you're being honest with yourself with what you want, what you need, and what you're looking for, and holding yourself true to your word, that kind of stuff. It's about commitments, and it's about, honesty, and it's not so much about love all the time.
Are you representing the best you to fit into some kind of situation? Right.
And that Two of Cups, though, is that relationship card that has been chasing me around since my divorce.
We don't play reindeer games.
We don't.
No, thank you.
And then you've got the Swords card, which are ideas, thoughts, communications, and conflicts. which is why one of the more difficult cards of the deck is the swords. It's the Ten of Swords. That is one of the most difficult cards of the deck. Because if we think back to what tens represent, it represents completion, fulfillment, success, and things coming full circle. And that 10 of swords coming into play is more of this idea that you're at rock bottom and you don't feel like there's anywhere else you can go. And their conflicts are so strong that you're stuck. And so the Ten of Swords is kind of like the world's on fire, I'm on fire, but everything's fine. And they're not. You're not allowing yourself to get out of that pattern, and you're stuck at rock bottom.
Yeah.
Right. And then you've got the Pentacles, which are material things in the world. So you've got like nature, resources, finances, health, your home. Those things fall within the realm of Pentacles. And Pentacles are often called coins, which is helpful for people to remember that it can deal with money. Not always money, but it can, in fact, deal with money. And then we've got the court cards, which are the pages, the knights, the kings, the queens, and the kings. And those names change sometimes, but traditionally you get the page, the knight, the kings, and the queens, right? And they're based on universal archetypes whose reflections we can see within our family unit. We can kind of further categorize their roles into different polarities and associate each with an action or event. We use terminology associated with gender roles. These are gender fluid. Just because a king comes up, that does not necessarily mean we're talking about a man. Just because a queen comes up does not mean we're talking about a woman. And it doesn't mean that we're talking about gender at all. And so these cards are older, and that's why some of the decks I have that are, queer authored will have more gender neutral monikers for these roles, instead of it being a page, a knight, a king, and a queen, right?
Can you explain a little bit more on the family roles that you mentioned? Like they can represent family?
Right. So like we're going to kind of get into that as I tell you what the cards kind of mean.
Okay.
Pages are children, right?
Okay.
So they deal with internal, the focus is internal. The events tend to be messages, and the actions are learning things. So basically, just imagine a child discovering one of the elements. They are inexperienced but curious. The role is to be an observer and student, trying to decipher messages and learn as much as they can in order to understand their suit. And so oftentimes when you're reading about family and pages come up in the reading, you can infer that we're talking about a child, right?
Or childlike.
Or childlike. And we can also talk about, like, in terms of jobs, the pages can represent learning and training on that job. Like, you haven't learned the job yet. You're still learning and you're still training, right? So it's kind of early in development, be it by
What is
age.
that called?
Huh?
What is that called?
What is what called?
You just get a job.
Hired?
A gate. Nope, I don't know. I'll come up with it. It'll happen sometime tonight.
And then you have knights, which are kind of more like adolescents, right? So you deal with things that are external. Movements are kind of events, and actions would be acting, right? Actions. So, like, the knights are the rowdy teenagers of the family. They're eager to prove their worth and make their mark on the world. They are brave and passionate, but sometimes go overboard. The role is to move forward and turn their suits into actions, right? So, as an example, the Knight of Swords is this idea that you're taking on more than you can chew, right? You're going too fast. You're moving too fast. You're not paying attention to the details. You're not paying attention to the things you learned as a page. You're just kind of going balls deep, and you may not know all the ins and outs. So you're going to fuck something up. So that's kind of a reminder to not bite off more than you can chew.
Too eager?
Yeah. And it can also represent this idea of making sure that you have enough energy to take on what you've taken on, and not to allow yourself to become overworked and then give up, right? Your queens are going to be your mothers. And again, remove the gender norm and stereotype from this idea. But queens are going to be the mother. So they're going to be internal, creative, and developmental, right? So queens are the mothers of the suit, more spiritually connected than their less mature counterparts. Their role is to develop and nurture the elements of their suit, both within as well as alongside others. They are the creators of their suit and express its powers, right? So the Queen of Cups would talk about, developing emotional maturity. It would talk about, caring more for other people or that kind of an idea.
I'm sorry, entry level.
Entry
Okay,
level.
okay,
There
go
you
ahead.
go. There you go. Circling back. Okay. And then you've got the king, which are focused externally. They are the authoritarian. They are control. They're authority figures who are in higher positions of power. Their role is to create order and structure, develop and enforce boundaries, and protect their suit when they are there. They are there to control elements of their suit. So, like the king of swords, for example, is cutting out the bullshit. You know what I mean? When that card comes up, you need to remember to cut out the bullshit, maintain your boundaries, and focus. Right? Something is
Get the
not
shit done.
get the shit done. Right? And so it's important to understand what the elements represent, what the numbers or the faces represent, and add those together. That's a basis how you start your readings. And oftentimes when people start out, they're going to be speaking in keywords, and that's fine. Your objective is to remember the key words to help you remember what the cards mean. And then the more familiar you get, the more comfortable you get, the more fluid your story becomes. And then you're reading the cards like a story instead of reading them like keywords. Right.
But
Another
also artwork if you knew that the artwork actually had to do with the meaning of the card,
it does
can
sometimes.
can you
Mhm.
also take extra information from looking just at the card too?
You
I
can
mean,
in a
not
lot
all
of
the
ways.
time.
You can in a lot of ways. Let me grab a deck. And we're back. Okay. So
Hydrate.
I pulled out
Okay.
2 different decks. I contributed to the library. I think I showed you yesterday. So a lot of my decks are in the other room now. I just have the ones I typically read from.
They're on museum display now.
They're on display in our little nerd room. Yes. Okay. So this deck is not traditional. And by that I mean I just kind of want to show you the difference between a traditional style and a non-traditional style. The artwork is very much like modern pop art type situations. And this deck is more of a traditional style tarot deck.
Is it the
So
wonky, cartoony look?
yeah, so you're gonna have like
Oh, it's beautiful.
very traditional imagery. So like the cups will be on there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So for example, we've got the Five of Pentacles, right?
Mhm.
Now, as we discussed, the Pentacles, let me turn off my iPad real quick. Okay, so as we discussed, Pentacles represent material things like your home, your hearth, your finances, things like that. And fives, let me see if I can block out some of the light. There we go. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. Blasted ring light. So the Five of Pentacles is going to represent this idea that deals with conflicts or changes with your material things in your life, right? So
Can you explain for listeners what that
the card?
depicts?
Yeah. So typically with a Five of Pentacles card, you're going to see either a church or you're going to see a house or a building with the lights on, and then some sort of bad weather, be it snow, be it rain, be it something happening in the card. There's usually one person walking by themselves with some kind of a cane or a staff or a walking stick, and they're typically huddled up and may look a little sick. Sometimes there's an animal chasing them, like a lost puppy or something like that. Oftentimes there'll be someone like lifting them up and holding them and helping them walk. The traditional idea is a church with the lights on the inside. You're outside, it's raining or it's snowing, and you're by yourself and you're walking with a walking stick, right? So the Five of Pentacles represents this idea of loneliness, of isolation, financial loss. It represents this idea of not having any feelings of not being able to have anywhere to turn to get better or to fix your situation. And then you look at the light in the church that lets you know the light's always on. You can always find assistance. You can always find that support. You can always come out of this type of situation. You just have to look for it. And help is always available. You can't ever feel like you're alone in the situation. So that's what the Five of Pentacles would represent. So,
Okay.
And then like with this deck, let me find a minor arcana card. Oh, the Tower.
Oh, that's yours. I will not take that.
Well, that's, you don't want the world to come down. What is this one? The Knight of Cups. Okay, so this is good. All right. This is the Knight of Cups. Okay. And then this, as I said, this is not a traditional card, right? The gentleman is coming into a room and the room leads to outer space and it says, "I'm back, bitches," is what the person is saying in the card. The Knight of Cups, cups are emotions, cups are passions, cups are these types of things, intuitions. Knights are movement, knights are in action. So the Knight of Cups would represent this idea on working with things that make you feel the most passionate, or things that you're most passionate about, keeping your motivations up by doing things you enjoy doing, or things that spark that motivation within you, right? And I'm back, bitches. And then another version would be like I can't show that one on YouTube. Some of these cards are naughty. The Three of Wands, okay? And the Three of Wands typically in a Rider-Waite base deck is a person standing on a cliff overlooking what looks like a river or a lake or an ocean, and they're holding a stick, and there's usually like two posts behind them to give you the three, right?
Mhm.
This deck is a bitch on a motorcycle. That's what it looks like. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And the Three of Wands represents surveying the land, paying attention, watching for obstacles, before they come into play. Like, you've done your research, you're ready to start actually doing the damn thing, to step out into the unknown, to trust yourself, to take that leap of faith and get out of your comfort zone. That kind of an idea is what these mean. So, and I forgot why we even brought out the cards. What was your question, girl?
The artwork, how
Yeah.
the artwork can or cannot help you in.
Yeah.
But should we talk about the Tower since it did make its own appearance?
Well, I mean, we can if you'd like.
I think it's a good one to explain because a lot of people fear it.
Yeah. So the Tower card is this idea of your foundations weren't strong enough, and so everything collapsed. It's a chance to start. It's a chance to start over, to make the changes that you need to make in order to be successful or prosperous or whatever. It's kind of like what happens when you don't pay attention to the Death card. You get the Tower card. So the Death card represents intrinsic change and deep needed changes, transformations, and kind of that understanding that changes keep us fresh. Changes keep us growing and keep us from getting stagnant. But when we fight change and things aren't working, but we're not willing to change it, they'll crumble. And that's what the Tower card is. It's this universe idea that you didn't want to make the changes necessary. Now you have no choice. Now you have a chance to make the changes that you need. And we recommend not building it the same way you did before, because you see what the fuck happened. It fell down. Right. But as far as using imagery, again, to kind of help you with what the card means, this is the Three of Cups, right? And as we learned, cups represent emotions. They can be celebrations, they can be love, right? And then you've got three people in this figure, and they're all cheersing. And this is a very traditional depiction of this card. It's a celebratory card. It's getting together with your friends. It's, three's not always a crowd, right? And it's a celebration card, right? So this will come up a lot of times for good situations. And you can see that there's a lot of bright colors. There's blues. They're all cheersing. They're all completely different in appearance. So it's not necessarily a family, right? So one's a redhead, and there are two that look like they could be of where the way their hair is done could be of like Middle Eastern descent, or they're all three completely different people. And so they're coming together, which would be friends and not so much family oriented, right? So it's like a party or a get together. So you absolutely can, in a lot of instances, use the card to help hone in on the message behind the card. But again, I mean, it's kind of up for artist interpretation on what symbolism they choose to put in the cards. colors are all associated with things. Certain symbolism, like birds, can mean messages. All those kinds of things can be in the cards. And looking at the imagery on the card is very helpful to help kind of guide the conversation a little bit and kind of hone in on the meanings to help you remember them. But there are a lot of tarot card decks that don't have any artwork. There are no colors, and so you have to kind of rely on what the cards mean at that point. But you can absolutely use the artwork on the card to kind of help drive your own thoughts, your own
Process it.
interpretation. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's one card in this deck, that's the Tower card, for example, in this deck, and it's the game of where the
Jenga?
blocks are falling. No, where the blocks
Tetris?
are Tetris. It's a game of Tetris, and you're getting ready to lose the game, and so
That gives me anxiety.
so like there's that. And I think the Ten of Swords in this deck is someone that has OD'd and they have a lot of needles in their arm or something.
Oh,
So yeah, so like they're gonna use different means to get the situation across, right? Always start with keywords, always start with what the cards mean, and then kind of guide yourself with your own symbolic intuition to help feed in the meanings. But I wouldn't suggest seeing a card and thinking that like it's a happy card because, oh, I see a lot of yellow in this card. That's the Ten of Swords. That's not happy. I don't care what kind of yellow you see in the card. More often than not, a good artist will depict the cards correctly, and they will give you that energy or that thought of what is represented by the card. They may just not be very specific. You won't see necessarily conflict in the swords. You just still have to remember that swords are conflict, right? So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, you can help yourself with the artwork most of the time.
because in my head, like I'm picturing like a card, right? But it's
Yeah.
solid black and white writing, and it's the icon for whatever suit
Mhm.
and a number. And
Mhm.
I'm like, if someone were to make cards like that,
They have cards like that.
oh
They
my
absolutely
God,
do. They absolutely do. Mhm.
that sounds like it is such a painful deck to use.
Mhm. And then I have a deck that all the cards look so similar that I can't read it. But I mean, so they have both kinds, and they even have tarot cards in Braille. So even if you're blind,
Inclusivity is cool.
right? So like there'll be obviously no pictures on those cards. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay, so let's start wrapping up this episode.
Right.
And if people want to know more, should we possibly entertain the idea of like a part two?
Yeah, we can absolutely do it. If people have questions, leave us a comment below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can always leave a comment. We always put our contact info at the end of the video. So like, share, comment, and subscribe. But at the end, we'll have our email addresses. You can always shoot us an email with comments, suggestions, questions, clarifications, and we can absolutely address those in another episode for sure. And as I said, there is a lot that goes into tarot. So we can do multiple episodes to address different aspects of tarot. Because, I mean, we didn't even touch on the astrological signs that go along with the cards or any of that. So absolutely, I'd be down for another episode.
Is there anything that we did not discuss yet that you wanted to?
Not that I can think of. I want people to look at tarot with a more serious lens. I mean, yes, it is for entertainment purposes only because that's the law. But instead of worrying so much about our future, the future is never set in stone. So I would like to tell people to use tarot as more of a recognizing trauma from the past or issues from the past, how they're affecting your present, and what you can do to not allow them to affect your future instead of worrying about what's going to happen in your future. Worry about the now and, utilizing your past as a tool to make your future better.
I would like for you to inform the people of how they can contact you for a reading.
If you want a reading, the best way to contact me would be psnnp.rob, R-O-B-B, @gmail.com. Or find me on the Book of Faces as Rob, R-O-B-B, R-O-B-B, or on Instagram as Hobie, HOBEE_Rob, ROBB.
And I would also like to wrap us up by saying, if the reader that you are looking at doesn't know all the information that this reader just told you, don't go with it.
Again, I would just like to say, I mean, I have been reading them for 25 years. I've done years and years and years of reading and research, and I've got probably 30 books devoted to just tarot. There is no hard, fast rule in how to learn. It's a journey, and just kind of take the journey.
And before you invest money in someone, make sure that they are the legit person
Right.
that you're trying to reach. They're not
Absolutely.
a fake. Yeah.
Absolutely. But tarot is a valuable tool. You don't need religion. Just a fun little fact. Popes of the past had tarot card readers. So there you go.
Okie dokie. Well, this has been very educational and I have enjoyed it. And thank you so much for taking time out of your birthday to spend a little bit with us. I hope that
Absolutely.
your day is magnificent. Did you have a cake?
No, I had cake pops.
Should I make you a cake and send it to? Listen.
No, I don't eat a lot of cake.
Okay.
But I'm going to blow out candles because, I am a witch, and there is history with blowing out candles and making wishes. So there will be candles lit and blown out tonight to make a wish. And I will have a cake pop. And my mom sent me cake pops for my birthday. And,
as long as his name isn't Candles.
it is my birthday.
I ran out of liquid, so let's just pretend that
Pinkies
there's
up.
juice coming out.
All right, girl. I love you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us. We love y'all, sweet pumpkins. Stay safe, and remember
to fix your mouth. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to get updates and our latest episodes.